Hello, welcome everyone to another forecast. It's Dr. Claire Moon of Aligning Light Astrology, and it's going to be May. And I think this is maybe my fourth year of doing these. I started doing these around 4 years ago, back in May. And I remember it because I thought it was so funny using the meme, it's going to be May. So yeah, here we are again. It's going to be May, and we're going to talk about it. First, we're going to talk about April, though. But before we do that, I've got some announcements and some little housekeeping things. If you are coming on back, welcome back. You know what to do. If this is your first forecast with me, we're going to talk about astrology, and there is a chat to the right-hand side of your screen. You can interact with the other astrology enjoyers over there. If you have any questions for me during this time, this is part of why I like to do this live, is I like to give people an opportunity to ask me whatever they want, kind of about astrology, especially upcoming astrology. I'm not going to go through every single date. So especially if there's like certain dates you were wondering about that I skipped over, please let me know in the chat. I circle back and I look at that at least a few times over the next 2 hours. I'll probably be here for a couple hours. Um, I think the only other thing, my discount code for the month ahead is Earth, like the planet, EARTH, Earth, and that's going to get you a discount on forecasting. I also have natal chart readings that I do, but I also do personalized forecasting, usually looking at the year ahead. A lot of times people will get a reading around their birthday to kind of see what's coming up, what to expect. I can give kind of a pulse check, a vibe check. We can get really specific and look at outcomes of certain life topics over the upcoming future periods of time. But I also have other services. I do tutoring, mentoring, particularly for Hellenistic astrology, if you're a student of that, or if you are any kind of astrologer or reader, really, and you're starting your own practice. I also help people with that, just because I've done it and I can share what I've done. Other than that, I am getting back to electional astrology. So if you are looking for a certain time to do a thing and have a good outcome, that's what we do with electional astrology. It's kind of like picking the best type of weather to go sailing or to go on a vacation or something like that. Thinking of these ancient ways that astrologers actually would, decide when are we going to build the mill? When are we going to go on the big ship expedition? When are we going to, start building a city? Astrology is used for all of those things, including marriages. I mean, it's not building a city, but just about if you're getting married. So yeah, hit me up for that as well. All of this can be found at www.aligninglightastrology.com, or you can just Google Claire Moon Astrology or search engine Claire Moon Astrology. I'm trying to get myself out of the habit of saying Google because I'm not about it anymore. So I'm trying to get myself to say search engine, search engine. It doesn't roll off the tongue, but I don't care. Okay. Hello, Angela. Welcome. Oh, good evening. Yeah, I always wonder. I'm in Central Time, so Chicago time zone. It's an hour earlier than the Eastern time zone, 5 hours earlier than Universal Standard Time. And so, it is a nice time. It's actually the evening for a good chunk of the world. If you're in Africa and Europe, welcome. You might not be asleep for once. Usually you all are, tucked in, unless you're third shifters. Okay, so let's see. I think those are all my announcements. Thank you for listening to that. I have the dates of interest. Let me just read those off really quickly. And then I'm going to talk about some old business. We're going to reflect on April a little bit, what we're coming out of, and then we will move on and talk about May. Uh, all right. So we've got May 2nd, approximately when Mars is coming out of their post-retrograde time. So these Mars retrograde stories that we've been dealing with since last October, really December when they stationed, but even before that, we've been dealing with it for several months. That'll be wrapping up on the 2nd of May. So just in a few days as I record this. On the 4th of May, Pluto is stationing retrograde. On the 10th of May, Mercury is entering into Taurus. On the 12th of May, we're going to have a Scorpio full moon. On the 16th, that's approximately when Venus is coming out of their post-retrograde phase. On the 16th is approximately, depending on location, conditions, Mercury is going to disappear in the morning sky. So they're going to have their morning set. On the 20th, Sun is entering into Gemini. On the 24th, Saturn is entering into Aries. On the 25th, Mercury enters Gemini. And on the 26th, we're going to have a Gemini new moon. So that's a speed run of the dates of interest. All of them are written below. Also below, you can find all my links to relevant things, my website, all the services I was just talking about. But then also, last thing, I did forget to say this. I made rising sign horoscopes for the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Check those out. That's a transit that I'll be talking about today a little bit, but we're coming into, and it's going to last for a good year and a half by degree, longer if you're a bi sign person. So check out those rising sign horoscopes for Saturn Neptune conjunction. Also, still, I mean, older content, but still relevant. Venus in Aries and Pisces. I also did rising sign horoscopes for that. Venus is going to be spending the next month in Aries. So more than, well, a little bit more than that. So we've still got a little bit left of that story going on. And I have a couple mutual aid highlights. I've been highlighting these for a while, and I will continue to more of an international focus and then more of a United States focused one. But check out doctorswithoutborders.org and check out the bailproject.org. Also, last thing. I have a sliding scale. Speaking of mutual aid, if my services are prohibitively not within your price range, that's okay. I've got a sliding scale for that. Email me at, what is my email? aligninglight@gmail.com. It's most of my business name, shortened. aligninglight@gmail.com. Okay, let's talk old business. Um, let's talk about April because we're coming out of some things. It's April 29th as I record this. And let me pull up my notes. We've got, like I mentioned, Mars is coming out of their shadow. Mercury is out of their retrograde shadow as well. Venus is direct, Mars is direct, Mercury is direct. So all of these inner planets that are so part of our regular experience of life, a lot of our communication, relationality, a lot of the stuff we deal with on the regular, all of that has been going through some changes over the last several months. And over the course of April, a lot of those things straightened out, started to move in a more forward linear direction than they have been the last several months. So that's been a kind of a vibe shift. I think in more for a lot of purposes in a more favorable direction for most of us. Neptune has changed signs. So now Neptune is in Aries. I do riff on that a little bit. I haven't talked much about Neptune and Aries, even though it's definitely in there. But I did riff on it a little bit per rising sign in those Saturn-Neptune conjunction horoscopes. So just if you're curious about that, I did say a few words about Neptune and Aries in that piece as well. So that's old business. That's definitely the case. I've been in there for about a month. So we've had a month of getting in touch with what Neptune and Aries is going to be like. They're actually going to be in there. Let me check. Until October 22nd. Then they're going to go back into Pisces for their last time this round. And then by early 2026, then we'll have Neptune back in Aries again. But we are having a rather long preview of what Neptune and Aries will be for the next 14 years until 2039, 2038, 2039. I've been noticing it already. I'm not going to get into those anecdotes quite yet, but it's seeable, I do think. Other piece of old business, we did just get through, we're still kind of getting through, in my opinion, this Pluto Mars Sun T-square. This recently happened. There was a lot of not good news that day to reflect what is usually a really potent, powerful transit. It's like all these planets of vitality, creation, destruction all together. It can be people just moving through a lot of difficult work or, just brute forcing something. It can also be kind of violent weather, to be frank. And, hindsight is 2020. Check out the headlines over the last week. Around the world, there's been some difficult, violent types of things going on to reflect what this is. We're coming out of that now. So the good news is that it's over. But the interesting thing, though, this Mars-Pluto opposition, this is a thing that's been going on. We've had a three hit of this since October. So around the end of October was the first Mars-Pluto opposition. And then we had our second one. It was around the turn of the year, like around the first week of January. And then the last week here of April, really. So if you want to, go back, little homework assignment, look in your journals, look in your notes and see what was going on around those times. Again, can be just themes of getting a lot of really hard work done, really powerful time, a lot of vitality. Can also be a time of stress, tension, intensity, um, yeah, and power dynamics and conflict because Mars and Pluto are involved. So it's not like great weather. Now, this brings me to one of my general points for the month ahead that I'm going to get to in terms of the mind your own business days. So I have these days where it's like the weather is not super nice looking. It's not super like comfortable, chill, tranquil, peaceful looking. And sometimes that fits for like doing stuff you don't want to do, like going to the DMV or like filling out a form or going to the gym or starting a new like gym routine. Like all of that can be really uncomfortable and can be reflected by like a difficult piece of astrology weather. Um, but sometimes it's just crummy weather and not great things happen under it. So I call it my mind your own business days. So this month, those have really revolved around when is the moon in contact with Mars and Pluto because Mars is still not up to full speed. They're taking their time. They just stationed retrograde over a little over a month ago, but uh, so just to rattle these off, and these are going to get less intense as the month goes on now that they are separating, but it's still a little on. So I want to watch out and maybe mind your own business on May 2nd and 3rd. Maybe more the 3rd, but I threw in the 2nd. May 10th and 11th, maybe mind your own business. And also, if you're out not minding your own business for good reasons, like you're doing really important things that are not minding your own business, which is also needed sometimes, be there, your message then here for like May 2nd, 3rd, 10th, 11th. If you're out there creating a righteous ruckus, be careful, my friends. Be astute. And then on the 17th and 18th of May, those days, and kind of soft. It's not as bad because Mars has, by the end of May, gotten so much further away from this opposition from Pluto. But throw May 23rd, May 24th on your calendar as well. Um, I think there's some other reasons too why the 17th and the 18th were on that list, but those are some of my don't love them days, not my favorite days of the month. Um, Last thing for old business is that all of these planets now that have gone through Pisces have made their way through Rahu, through the North Node, this confusing element. So relationships with Venus having some confusion, structures, boundaries having some confusion, amongst many other things that Venus and Saturn can represent, especially personally in your own birth chart. Um, Now those planets have moved through that. Mercury's done with the North Node, so everyone's done with the North Node for the most part. Saturn's still going to deal with them a little bit more, but at least they're getting some space between them. So that's another thing that is at this point as I record this on April 29th, we're getting out of that. That's in the rear view mirror. And so at least one kind of messy part of the sky is getting less messy. So I think that's my last old business, which does bring me to something I forgot to mention at the beginning. The best way to use this information today is to know your rising sign. That's very helpful. That if I'm talking about certain signs, like I was just talking about Pisces, for instance, like let's say you're in Aries rising, Pisces is your 12th house for all Aries risings. So, more specifically for them, then when there's Pisces stuff happening, then that's going to affect 12th house life topics for you specifically, not your money necessarily, not your career necessarily, but maybe more your mental health, emotional health, spiritual health department, because that's what the 12th house is, amongst other things. So it's a way to get more specific. You can find your rising sign by going to Chani Nicholas's website or astroseek.com or astrodienstastro.com. All of those work great chart generators. Try not to use AI. I've been hearing more and more about people using AI, which I mean, that's okay. Like the chat GPTs, like no judgment, no judgment zone here at my astrology counter. Um, but the AIs are often wrong. They're not accurate. So at least double check it with one of these other websites if you are using that for any reason. Um, get your rising sign. That's the best way to use this info. Uh, okay. I think that's my last thing before new business and moving on to the future. Before I do move on to the future, I would love to take a deep breath. Let me see if anyone is here and check in. Hello, Astro Yaga. Welcome. Hello, John. Yeah, like, that makes sense too. He's saying AI is great for learning about archetypes, but terrible for knowing where anything is in a chart. And that it's like different pools of info, right? Like with archetypal stuff, that's a lot of word salad that, the AI is scraping the internet for, it's probably scraping my website too for everything I've said about whatever. And like, I trust it a bit more to do that than to do like math and like calculation stuff where we need it's like the softwares are doing pretty complicated maths that I don't understand how to talk about. Hello, Cindy. Hello, Clark. Welcome. And I see some familiar faces and some new ones. I think I'm gonna take one more deep breath. And remember, for anyone viewing, if you at any point today, if we're talking about the future, the month ahead, and especially with Saturn, Neptune, there's so much uncertainty. And that's going to be the case. We're going to all be so sick of that word in a year and a half. Um, there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. And even with astrology, it can be specific archetypally. It is not always able to predict exactly, what's going to happen in detail. So there's always going to be an unknown even if we can kind of get the fuzzy outline of how things are looking. Um, so part of astrology, I think, is a practice of getting comfortable with uncertainty as much as we're using this tool to try to get beyond that. We also have to understand the limitations. There's probably going to be some uncertainty. It doesn't feel good. Long story short, come back to the present. If you're feeling anxious about the future, if there's anticipation about the future, that is a good thing to notice and a great practice to notice that. I'm always anticipating the future. My brain is just, we're working on it. We're a work in progress, but when I am in those places and it's not helpful and it's just activating in a not helpful way, I do like to come back to the present moment and remember, all right, what does it feel like to have my feet on the ground? What is the next most skillful thing to do? Is it to do nothing, to take a breath, to fill out a form? You know, so coming back to now and remembering that that is always an option. I like to use astrology to plan for the future and not hang out there too long, not hanging out in the future more than we need to plan and to enact the most skillful, timely actions or inactions. That's what this tool really helps us to do, is with timeliness. And timeliness is really important. Very helpful. Farmers have been using timeliness this whole time. Uh, Very important. Okay, philosophical corner done. Let's talk about the future. So, Mercury. In the month of May, Mercury is going to start off pretty strong. They're going to be visible, direct. They're fine where they are. They're in their morning star position in a daytime sign. They're pretty happy. But around mid-month, they do start to struggle a bit. And then around May 25th, Mercury is going to get into Gemini and their condition is going to improve a lot. So in English, what that means is when it comes to communicating, buying and selling, so purchases, travel or planning, any of these like things where we have to use our cognitive brain, our communication, or our wallet. Those are all Mercury things. And the worst time to do those things is the middle of May. The best times to do it in May is after the 25th, but the beginning of May is fine too. So I'll be naming as we go through today when Mercury really starts to get into poor shape, but roughly it's mid-month. So just so you know there, and it's not like we can't do purchases, travel, planning, communication mid-month. Life does go on after all, but that's when you know mid-month to be extra careful with purchasing. Check the fine detailed description, making sure that you're, buying or selling what you mean to. Middle of May, be careful with your communication, just double checking things. And if other people are dropping a ball, know that the skies are not kind. It's like, if someone trips on the ice, we don't go, make it worse. So yeah, middle of the month, Mercury's just okay. They get better on the 25th. Big news, Saturn's moving into Aries. So that's happening on the 24th of May. We're going to have just like Neptune, we're going to have a little dip, a little taste, dip our toe into the jacuzzi. Actually, it's not. We're getting out of the jacuzzi for a minute. And then on September 1st, back into the jacuzzi, back into Pisces. So it's just a preview. We're not going to get totally into the Saturn and Aries time, but we are going to get a preview. And I find that those are so helpful, very helpful, and very, very good to see and helpful to see. I've been watching, this will be my third time of this, really watching it. And every time Saturn does this little preview, it really does. It'll show you like, oh yeah, this is what's coming when Saturn gets back here. And that'll be February 13th of 2026. But I'll have to say May 24th of 2025, Saturn is entering Aries. I am currently working on a video. My next rising sign horoscopes are going to be about Saturn and Aries, but not about that specifically. I'm going to actually do a video about that later. But the Saturn aspect in your birth chart, which matters. It's Saturn and Aries matters, and we have to look at how that compares to where Saturn is in your birth chart. So keep your eyes peeled for that video. That'll be coming in the next couple weeks. What else is going on this month? Venus and Mars are in a trine, and actually, there they are. And Mercury too. So we've got this really nice interaction happening between planets that have to do with passion, art, getting stuff done, flirting, fun. It's the fire in our loins, and it's just very constructive this month. So May, do the Rick Rubin philosophy of following what sets your heart on fire, following that fire, that passion inside of you, that motivation. It'll probably turn out in a lot of ways, especially in the Leo and Aries parts of your chart. Whatever you want to create, put together, collaborate. Why I think it is going to be so constructive, especially, is because Venus has the overcoming say in the situation. So more friendliness, kind of that connectivity is going to win out over Mars's potential for conflict. And it's a trine, so they're already working together really well. So these planets come together, and it can be much more like sexy, fun, spicy, flirty, creative. So that's a vibe for May, which is nice. I dig it. And even just Mercury, Venus being together in Aries is kind of a creative juice there, a kind of creative fuel. A lot of artists, poets, writers have Venus, Neptune, or sorry, Venus, Mercury conjunctions. So it's like putting thought, word, planning to dexterity, you know, tiny things to art, Venus, creativity, Venus. So all together, if you're an artist to create, if you got to be creative for any kind of reason, if you need to collaborate with others in a really productive way, in some ways, this month looks really, really, really good for that. Uh, Chiron is in the mix. So, I guess one of the big questions for the first week of May, big question for May in general, because there is a lot of things touching on Chiron. And Chiron is this planet that can be either healing or hurting, in short. It's a gross oversimplification, but very simply put, we can ask ourselves this month, is this conversation hurting or helping, or hurting or healing? Because sometimes healing doesn't feel good, or sometimes there's like that suffering to end suffering and something is healing. It doesn't always mean it feels good, but that's very different than, is this just hurting because it's hurting and it's not helping? So asking ourselves that, especially with our words, plans, thoughts, ideas, sometimes it's like, even for myself, is this thought, is this story I'm telling myself helping, healing, or hurting? Those are good questions this month. Um, Mercury and Mars are coming together in some ways this month too. And so there will be some days in May where I'm going to be telling us to watch our words a bit. They can be cutting, but all to say, headlines, very creative, constructive looking month with the Venus Mars trine, with Mercury being in there. Make sure there's nothing funky afoot with Chiron being there. That's the one caveat. Jupiter and Chiron are going to be really close all month. They already are as I type that, or as I record this. So, again, like it's like there is this potential for healing in May. I think, especially if the last few months have been really difficult. We did have, we came out of a Mars retrograde, landed in a Venus retrograde, had to deal with a Mercury one in betwixt. So if there are some things that are still kind of figuring themselves out, sorting themselves out, yeah. And also, I think May does hold a lot of potential for healing. So keep that in mind. A lot of potential for even just getting tools or like helpful understandings that will help with healing along the way, even if it's not in May. Sometimes I find Chiron can bring in a lot of helpful tools for healing, not just the healing itself. Uh, Pluto stationing, that's happening. It's been happening. They're so slow. They're at 3 degrees, 48 arc minutes currently. Yeah, they're pretty much where they're going to be stationing. And so when a planet stations, it stops moving in the sky. It's like if you watched it day by day, or I guess in Pluto's case, week by week, month by month, you'd see that, or if we could see them, you would see them moving, right, across the sky. When they station, they slow down to a stop in apparent motion in the sky from our perspective. And the symbolism that goes along with that, one of the ways we can think of that planet stationing is that their significations, their symbolism gets louder, more potent, more intense. And so Pluto stuff, especially in your birth chart, if you've got things in early Aquarius, early Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio, any planets, angles, your ascendant, midheaven, descendant, IC, any of those, any planets in those early degrees, they might really be noticing Pluto in May. It's changed. Yep. It is change. A lot of planets do change. Pluto does change. They are creation and destruction together. If you think of volcanoes, very Pluto. Volcanoes create land. They also can destroy land, and a lot of times they do it at the same time. Um, so just that, and you think about like the potency, just the power, just pure power coming in with Pluto. So it's going to come out in a number of ways. If there's just a lot of tension, intensity around in various parts of your life, uh, it's hard for me to tell. I'm an Aquarius rising. It's just kind of generally my life is intense in some ways right now. It's hard to, it's just kind of generally. Uh, but it also can be power dynamics. So I guess in May, then the practical wisdom would be with Pluto getting louder, just continually being aware of, is this thing, idea, person, place helping to empower you or disempower you? And just being aware of that. And of course, as best as we can, lean toward what leaves us more empowered. With Pluto, I just always want to avoid power dynamics or differentials where things can get funky, even when we don't mean for it to happen that way. Pluto. Mm. If there's for these people who might have things in early Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio, if there is big change afoot, or if you feel like something is wanting to shift, whether that's something really big inside of you, or say it's something at like if you're a Taurus rising, maybe there's something in your career life that's really shifting. Do your best to, I mean, one, just navigate it, just maintain stability, navigating whatever those big kind of tectonic shifts are that are probably going to happen slowly over time. It's kind of a slow transit. Sometimes things can be sudden, but sometimes these Pluto things take time. So brace yourself kind of for stability, but then at the same time, leaning into that change. Because the more we resist Pluto, the more that pressure just weighs down upon us. Um, so yeah, Pluto's stationing this month. They're pretty much just not going to be moving. So just want to point that out. If you do have some points in those fixed signs, you might be noticing that a bit more this month. Okay, I talked about the mind your own business days. And then last thing, Venus is getting done with Neptune. All the planets are getting done with Rahu. They're also getting done with Neptune. Mercury's already past Neptune, and Venus is soon to be beyond Neptune. Neptune can be confusing. So for those reasons, I love when planets have moved on. Uh, so it's going to be certain areas of all of our lives being affected by Neptune right now, whether that's because of Saturn's involvement with Neptune or Venus's. That being said, at least one of those components gets cleared up in the very first few days of May. So if, it's one other little thing to kick the can down the road, if there's especially the Venus road parts of your chart, the Libra, the Taurus parts of your chart. So for me, that's like with my home, my living situation. If there's anything confusing, give it a couple more days. Like say if I wanted to like rearrange my furniture right now and I wasn't sure how to do it, I bet in 3 days I'm gonna know how to do it. So yeah, wait till Venus gets on the other side of Neptune. Also, though, these first few days of May, really good for creativity. If you're an artist, a creator, jot down all your inspirations, even if you don't get to act on them. And it's great for imagination, visioning, imagining solutions that maybe we don't know how to do them yet, but maybe we will someday. It's all very fruitful Neptune activity for Venus and Saturn to be doing. So for again, the next few days, end of April into May, great for art, creativity, spirituality. But if you're looking for concrete certainty, especially with certain areas of life that Venus is in charge of, might have more luck May 2nd, May 3rd. And I think that's a segue, if I ever heard one. Before I get into the details, let me check on the chat. Yeah, definitely use in betwixt. Put it in. it'll make you sound like a wizard. Well, there's a question. So Angela asks, they have Scorpio rising, but they're like a late Scorpio rising, like 26 degrees Scorpio rising, got a lot of planets in Scorpio, or sorry, in Scorpio with five planets, different lots in Sag. So you have a lot of planets in Sag in your whole sign second house, but what is probably in quadrant houses, your first house. So for my work, when you're like listening to my stuff, do Scorpio rising because when I'm talking about Sagittarius transits for you, I'm going to be assigning life topics, assigning house topics through whole sign houses. If you're listening to a sun sign astrologer, if you're listening to a modern astrologer, or if, well, I shouldn't even say that. Any astrologer who uses, if you know they're like a Placidus person or they use porphyry or like I actually use Alcabitius sometimes when I'm doing triplicity lords for things. Uh, then yeah, go for it. So it's kind of like if you're driving a car that takes unleaded gas, use unleaded. If you're driving a diesel vehicle, put diesel gas or diesel fuel in there. Neither is right or wrong. It's like we're looking at you and you are this mug. And if we're looking at you through whole sign, maybe we can see the handle here. And maybe if we look at you through Placidus, we don't see the handle anymore, but it's just a different perspective on you. And so you get, and then maybe you get a tarot reading and maybe you're like, whoa, what's under there? So you can get all these different versions. And that's how I reconcile. So long story short, both and look at both of them. For my stuff, I'm using whole sign houses for my and rising sign horoscopes. So then for me, I am going to interpret your Sagittarius planets as being involved with your second house stuff. Um, One last thing though for you, because why not? It is worth noting, like, and if none of this is stuff you've heard about, don't worry about it. Just pretend like I'm not saying it. But if there's anyone else wondering, so there's this timing technique called annual profections. And there's a whole sign, okay, annual profections. You have a sign that is activated for that year. And you go sign by sign by sign each year you're alive. That's different than medieval Persian Islamicate era astrology, continuous perfections that release the ascendant through the bounds, and that ascendant starting in the sign that's perfected for that year. But for like a 26-degree Scorpio, I'd be starting at 26 degrees of every sign when I'm doing that perfecting. So and this is why, this is why you get readings, so someone can parse all this out for people individually. Uh, then it's like, yeah, even for perfections, a late degree, like you're gonna, in your like first house year, if we do continuous perfections, you're gonna be experiencing a lot of second house stuff during that first house year. And so it depends on what astrology we're using. It depends on what technique we're using. I hope I didn't just make that all much more confusing, but that's the nuanced answer. But thank you for asking that because that stuff matters a lot. And it's good to know that we're speaking the same dialect. And then there's a question, consider Pluto retrograde stronger than when it's direct? Not necessarily. No, because in both cases they're not moving. They're just like hanging out at one piece of the sky. My teacher, Chris Brennan, one of the metaphors that he uses is like imagine someone hitting the same note over and over again on a piano. That's like when a planet is stationed and it's not moving, it's just hitting that same part of the sky just over and over and over again. And that's going to be the case whether they're about to go retrograde or whether they're about to go forward. So personally, I think it's the same either way. But great question. Actually, I know people say like, ah, I'm a beginner, duh. But they ask sometimes like the best questions because I think like the longer you learn something, the more you start to like get in the way of your own questioning. So because no one's ever asked me that before, and that's a really great question. Thank you. Okay, uh, let's see. Good questions. Keep them coming if you got any. And again, if I skip over a date, I am going to dive into each day now or my important ones I've grabbed. So if I skip any that you were interested in, let me know. Um, okay. So yeah, again, first week of May. Is it healing? Is it hurting? Let that help you choose what to do or not do. And I know that's a big question, but I'll just leave it at that. On the 2nd of May, Mars is reaching the same degree where they originally stationed retrograde on December 6th of 2024. And they went all the way back to mid-Cancer on February, what was it? February something, they stationed direct. And now, as of May 2nd, they have retraced all of that ground. That was that post-retrograde part where they had to retrace all these steps. So these stories should start to be getting in the rearview mirror. I'm going to give you one example from my own life, not to talk about myself, but we each are our own best example usually because we all know our lives the best. So I do have examples from my own life. I hurt my back. I hurt my back really bad when Mars was stationing. It was right at the end of November, and Mars was getting ready to station retrograde, and I lifted something the exact way that you're not supposed to lift stuff. Like, and I know better. I'm constantly trying to pay attention, and it was the one time I wasn't paying attention. I was talking to someone, and I lifted a thing, and I did it wrong, and I had just been starting to get back to the gym. And I was so disappointed. And I'm like getting to that critical, pivotal age where things are starting to change in my body. And it's just like very unsettling to be like, am I going to be able to do certain things ever again? Uh, and since then, Mars has stationed. And I noticed around when Mars was stationing, I started to get back to the gym and it was going okay. And then I aggravated it. I did the wrong thing. I tried to do squats again, which is my favorite exercise. And I am not able still. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back to squats, maybe, hopefully, but I went too soon. So Mars was stationing direct. Mars was loud. I kind of twinged it. I hurt myself a little bit, but it wasn't bad. Now Mars is direct. I'm back at the gym. I haven't re-hurt myself. Things are going okay. I'm having less and less pain. My injury is starting to move forward a bit. And now I feel like, yeah, I'm finally getting back to it. And it has been such a Mars story for me. And it did happen in my sixth house of health and disease and injury. Sixth house is disease and recovery from disease, injury, recovery from injury. So yeah, that happened. So likewise, if you can think back to your own life, if you've got any stories, especially if you can read your chart yourself and it makes sense, if you've got any stories that really got kicking in November, December, maybe those things are starting to wrap up and, fix or kind of figure themselves out at this point. Um, so that is how May opens, is Venus getting done with Neptune. Mars is out of their post-retrograde phase. We are in a couple of these mind your own business days. I put the 2nd because we got this beautiful moon, but they're applying to Mars. So, you know, on the 3rd, they're with Mars. We're still pretty close to Pluto. Now, separating makes a huge difference. Just Mars being on the other side of this, even by a degree, is great. But so still a little bit of caution around the 2nd and 3rd of May, just because Moon is really plugging in with these themes of power, intensity, conflict. Maybe not the best time to have the meeting on Friday. It could, but if you're having a tense meeting on Friday, yeah, that's real. Saturday will be better after Saturday's over. Um, If you are in like the more universal time zone, so if you're in like the time zones of Africa, Europe, this mind your own business time is actually Saturday night into Sunday. So be careful out there if you are having like a good time on Saturday night, you're trying to party or, just relax. If you're going out anywhere, just be careful. It's not the night where I would take risks. One of the maybe more reckless things I've done as an astrologer is when I was not dating anyone, I was living alone, and I love taking walks at night. And you can't just be taking walks at night. Not when, depending on who you are, definitely should not be taking walks at night alone. But I did because I guess I was willing to take that risk. I wanted to look at the night sky by the lake by myself. So for about a year, I was doing that, and I would use astrology to decide what kind of risk I was willing to take or not. And so if this popped up during my night walk, I wouldn't, I wouldn't have gone out under this, if that gives anyone an idea of that. So, okay, the evening. And then if you're like in like global Eastern time zones, then this mind your own business stuff actually stretches into Sunday on the 4th. So the weekend is more funky. So just keep your wits about you. Take extra care of yourself and others. Uh, okay. And another potential for, healing. Is it healing or is it hurting? On the 4th, Moon is plugging into Mercury and Chiron. So this first week, a lot of potential for healing if you're in the need for any. But there can also be those kind of thorns in the paw, like, oh, I wasn't expecting that to hurt, but it did for some reason. It can be like you're saying the curtains are blue and it just hits someone the wrong way. Pluto stationing retrograde on the 4th. Mercury Chiron there. So, and this is pretty, able to work through maybe some patterns that are challenging or uh, Pluto can sometimes represent things that are difficult to change or things that feel out of our control. And sometimes when other planets hit nice configurations with Pluto, it's kind of a way to get more leverage around those Plutonian challenges or those things that feel stuck. Um, maybe there's some cool healing tools that come in around the 4th or 5th of May for you. 4th, 5th, 6th of May as Mercury gets into Chiron and they have a discussion. It's like it feels like Luke Skywalker going to talk to Yoda or something. So difficult but helpful. And then on the 6th, we have that completing that Mercury Chiron conjunction. Chiron isn't just a wound. Chiron was this amazing mentor, teacher, healer, physician, problem solver person that definitely had a wound of his own that he could not fix, which was a bummer. But in the meantime, he did all of this other meaningful stuff. So I tried to look at like, yeah, this could be an ouchie. So if someone's saying hurtful things, 4th, 5th, 6th, sorry. Nothing we can do about that in some cases. But if you can't avoid saying, if you are the speaker, we have more control over that. So May 4th, 5th, and 6th, be gentle as much as you can with your speech in certain situations. In other situations, I've noticed Chiron can be this real expression of the wound, saying, ouch, this hurts. And that's such an important part of things too, is to see what hurts, see where the suffering is, talk about it, get it all, dredge it all up, and then, be able to heal it. So this first week of May, this is why I'm saying this stuff is hurting, healing, helping. Um, it can be that necessary expression of pain coming in too. All right. On the 7th, we're going to get a configuration between Virgo moon, Uranus, Who else was it? Saturn. It felt like a nice problem-solving patch of weather on the 7th on Wednesday. If you need help, or like, you know, maybe into the 8th on Thursday. Heck, let's just say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th. If you need a problem, or if you have a problem that needs solving, if you are looking for a breakthrough of some kind, an insight, it might come a little bit more easily on these days. We're having a really detailed look at something, having some interruptions potentially, but sometimes those interruptions are like that sudden, oh, this is what I can do, or this is how to fix that. So, especially with a trine coming from Uranus, it can be so helpful. And it's really wrapped up with some of these earthly places of Taurus and Virgo. So these like practical breakthroughs, practical insights. That's more the vibe of things on the 6th, 7th, 8th. And seeing the problems clearly. Every time the moon is opposite Saturn, it's really showing us, hey, here's this great big dream and vision that you have, but here's where it is lacking, or here's where work is needed, or where there's like a delay or something. So when Uranus gets in there, it helps to kind of break that up and say, all right, well, here's that difficulty or that delay or that obstacle. Here's something that we could try that might help. So that looked interesting. And then on the 8th and 9th of May, we get a Libra moon. And this felt very personable, very interpersonally helpful. The moon is being supported by both benefics. I know both of those benefics are doing just okay, but some help is better than none. And it just is like an overcoming trine from Jupiter. It's like this injection of goodwill, faith into the discussion. So if there are any kind of funky things that we work through in this first week of May, it ends on kind of a sweet note. It ends with some, I don't know, some goodwill, some help, some vision that the future could be acted on in a way that is helpful. So very inspiring. Even if you just get a few really good ideas at the end of this first week of May, that could be the case. So who can we express ourselves to? Maybe that's a good thing to note too. I mean, just in the pursuit of right speech in my very sloppy practice of Buddhism, I'm not, I'm a lay person. I'm not no one to like look up to. But one of the ways in which I try to practice Buddhism is by right speech, which is really hard. And, it's like on this day, on the 8th and the 9th, right speech might be a little easier, but part of right speech as well, just in general. So I'm just backing away from the astrology. Part of that is knowing your audience. It is knowing, who am I talking to? Who is hearing me? And so maybe in these conversations in the first week of May, finding people who are supportive that will listen to us. That could be really helpful. Alrighty, and then Mercury is entering Taurus. So we're going to get one of our first ingresses for the month. Ingress is a fancy word for when a planet enters a place. So Mercury is entering Taurus. Before I jump into that, let me check the chat and see if there's any questions. Yeah, okay. So if Mercury is your Time Lord, then yeah, you might be noticing these Mercury ingresses a bit more loudly. And so even like for this theoretical Virgo rising, then really noticing ninth house topics as well coming in, long distance travel, continuing education, etc. I won't get into it. It's kind of one of my mind your own business days, because the moon is right here to lock in with what is a Pluto Mercury square. With Mars is kind of a little outside, but They're there. They're definitely seeing this and having their input, but it's not as strong, which is good in general. I like to see that, uh, especially if you're a day chart. If you're a night chart, it's fine. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. But yeah, it's like what I said with Pluto. Okay, Pluto stuff, power, potency. So a powerful urge to stabilize, a powerful urge to have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, to strategize. I think about Mercury coming into Taurus and they're like taking a lay of the land, being like, what is the geometry of this situation? How many bushels can we get? What's the strategy? It's kind of intense. Um, so if you're feeling like if you're getting a really tight grip on the steering wheel, if any of us are on the 10th, yeah. And especially when the moon gets into Scorpio. So uh on Saturday on the 10th, if you notice like really having a tight grip on the outcome, like really wanting or trying to force a certain outcome, just notice that. Notice if there's any fear driving the ship at all. Uh, that would be kind of on my interpretations of this, like favorable versus like less favorable. On the favorable end, like powerful, potent planning and strategizing energy. On the more difficult side, if you are holding on to all of that too tightly, it can cause a lot of suffering. Uh, so over planning, over strategizing, being too careful, overthinking stuff. That would be the sign that this is getting a little too much or maybe not helpful. No, Mercury, Pluto in a square, that I feel like those, I don't want to like make anyone feel like they're going to be less successful. But of course, like the sextiles and the trines, working with Pluto is a little easier. When it's in a square like this, it's just like potent Pluto. They're dialing up the bass and you're just getting nailed with it. So this would be like, wow, I'm really trying to quit this pattern or stop doing this pattern. And wow, the pattern is strong. I need a break. Like, what's that meme? There's like that boxer who was like, I'm gonna do this thing. And then like 20 minutes later, it's like, I need a beverage. It's a little difficult. And too, with Pluto being in this overcoming position, they're a bit louder. So I would say around the 10th, 11th, 12th, watch your mind. If your mind is doing things that are stressful, just watch it. It might feel a little less tense, a little bit more free and open and spacious maybe around like the 13th of May. Uh, but yeah, this entrance might be, and it could be something really like, I don't know, benign, like a kind of middle of the road interpretation would be there's something coming at Mercury that Mercury can't necessarily control. So say the neighbors want you to cut down like some trees along your fence line or something. And you're like, okay, I have this power coming down upon me and I got to cut down these trees. I got to make some kind of adjustment or change in order to navigate this. And so Mercury is navigating maybe something that it's fine, but it's like this, yeah, no, you have to do this thing. Um, so I don't know. That's what I have to say about that. But it was one of my mind your own business days because, I mean, it could be like this powerful transformation. I mean, so just to give people an idea, sometimes like Mars and Pluto opposite can be violence. One time it was my dad chopping a bunch of firewood, like way too much. I was like, Dad, you are old. Please stop. You're going to have a heart attack. And he didn't. He was great. And he just plowed through so much work. And it was like, wow. And he was using this really dangerous, like lumber or log splitter. And which, like, if you're not paying attention, that thing will chop your limbs off. Like, it's serious. So, like, that was very like Mars, Pluto, right? So it can come off in those really normal, I guess, ways. But it was a mind your own business day in case some of us aren't chopping wood and we're like keyboard warring and being insufferable or something. Um, all right, what else? Did I have anything else to say about that? Also watch for like squashing down your feelings, I guess. Squish Cat with their squasher downer. Make sure you're not squashing down all your feelings. Or if you are like, for whatever reason, you are forced to, like, if you're at a meeting and you can't, you have to like abstain, that would be another representation of this square. It's like Mercury wants to say something. They're visible, they're direct, they're totally capable of saying stuff here, but they so maybe feel like they can't for some reason. So there's a lot of ways it could come out, but it's a little dicey on the 10th and the 11th for that reason if you do not have appropriate outlets or handy outlets. Uh, and then the moon applies to Mars on the 11th. So this whole time as well, it does help that Mars sees the moon. The Mars is like, hey, the moon, you're in my place, and that's cool. The snacks are on the left. And the moon's like, thanks, but your snacks are trash. So it's not like the worst square in the world. But that being said, it's not great. So, if things are intense or tense on the 11th, get through the day, you will survive. And I think on the 12th, we're going to start to get out of this, but then we're going to have a full moon. So I'm going to talk about that in a second here. Things will chill out maybe more on the 13th when we get the moon into Sag. But there's quite a lot of things that the moon is going to experience while it is in Scorpio on the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And two, like, some of these days where the moon has just a lot of action, that's when stuff happens too. So if you're like, say, waiting to hear back about something or waiting for certain things to occur, um, sometimes it's these days where the moon is just really busy, whatever it's doing, for better or for worse, like things happen. So if you're waiting for anything, maybe the 10th, 11th, 12th, there'll be more balls rolling. But it is a little crunchy, as I say sometimes. Let's look at this full moon. Very interestingly, okay, little course of events here. Mercury enters Taurus. Moon and Mercury have a little discussion. Moon, Mercury, Pluto. And then we're going to have a full moon. So something is going to be visible, apparent, seen, whether it's just known by you or more widely seen. And then right after that, after the full moon on the 13th, the Mercury is going to perfect this. Is that it? Mercury is going to perfect their square. That was on the 12th, actually. But I thought it was interesting that there's this Mercury Pluto square right after the full moon, like within an hour it happens. So full moon, and then within an hour, we have this direct Mercury Pluto square that happens. So yeah, like something important on the 12th. The 12th looks important for some reason. Uh, the last aspect before that full moon, so the full moon happens around 12 p.m. Central Time. So it's going to be more in the evening around Universal Standard Time zones on the evening on the 12th. And that is a Monday. For more Eastern time zones, this is going to be in the very late hours on the 12th on Monday, more into early on the 13th. That's when you're going to have this full moon Mercury Pluto square. So the intensity, the things being seen, understood, spoken of, might be on the 12th as well, but just know like for you, it extends more into the 13th if you're in the global Eastern time zones. And you might be sleeping through some of this depending on your when you sleep. So that's kind of nice. Honestly, like I love when I sleep through like bad astrology weather. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night sick or, not sleeping well or nauseous or something. And I'll look at the clock and I'll be like, oh yeah, it's nauseous 30 o'clock. But sometimes I sleep through it and it's great. So hopefully you'll sleep through it. But anyway, let's talk about this full moon. It's it's fine. It's not like the most chill. It's not like a peaceful full moon if there ever was going to be one, or like a, it's not like a light, buoyant, fluffy full moon. Now, the good news here is that Moon is moving away from Mars. So then that overcoming kind of irritable, sharp pointiness of the weather, the sky at this time gets softened. And yet, by sign, yeah, Mars is T-square to this. Uranus is involved. Before we had Uranus being like the instigator of change or chaos, like we think about interruptions, disruptions with Uranus, breakthroughs, transformation with a lot of the outers, but Uranus. Before we had Uranus, a lot of that was Mars. Mars, one of my favorite ways of describing this actually comes from Austin Coppock, and he talks about splitting wood from one into two. You split a log of wood, it was one thing, and then it becomes two pieces of wood. When I think about squares being of the nature of Mars, squares are this very transformative process. You literally have to change directions on the circle to keep going. So, all in all, we've got what I think are two agents of transformation. Three, if we throw in by sign that Pluto can also see this pretty directly. Um, this is a great opportunity to make changes in the middle of May. If there are any really ingrained habit patterns of thought, patterns of behavior or movement, patterns of anything, this is a great time to break up those patterns. Not comfortable, like I said, not like a fluffy, comfy full moon, but it could be like a very potent one for making some changes. Uh, this is a take care of yourself full moon. Maybe mind your own business full moon if you can. If you are not minding your own business, please do so safely. Um, we're leaving a square from Mars here, and the next aspect after this is really this opposition with Uranus. And then right after the moon has a conversation with Uranus, then they talk to Saturn. So it's really interesting that like this new moon that we just had that kicked off in Taurus, we were also coming out of a Mars square. We were running into a sextile with Saturn. So it's like the challenges of now. Long story short, the challenges of right now, as we record this at the end of April, I think whatever challenges we are dealing with, I am hoping that they will seem easier by the full moon, because now the moon is going to be in a trine with Saturn. It's gone from a sextile with Saturn at the new moon to now the moon on this next lunation is experiencing a trine with Saturn. So it's almost as if to say, sextile, it's easier to work with Saturn, but it's not like the most easeful to work with Saturn. But we can kind of work with the challenges, the delays, the obstructions. That's what's up now. This is even easier to work with the challenges, delays, obstructions. Uranus is adding something of a breakthrough of some kind of new piece of information, maybe. Uranus is adding something unexpected. And given what the rest of the sky is up to, I think there's a possibility that it could be something unexpected or a disruptive thing, but that could be like helpful in some way. So, final answer, not comfortable, great for making big changes in your life. And you might even be forced to, but maybe it'll be in a favorable way. Uh, so lean into change. And that's kind of hard to say for fixed signs. They don't like to do that. Fixed signs. God, there's a lot of fixed energy in the sky. Look at that too. There's so many planets in fixed signs by the middle of May. And they like to get something going and maintain it. They like to like keep going with it. So to make changes, to change course can be so hard, but sometimes it's the best strategy. And they also don't really like to change their minds. They like to really get into something and then stick to it. With Uranus here, we might be asked to make some changes, that fixed signs. I don't really want to make a change, but it might be for the best. So lean into it as best you can mid-month. I think that's what I have to say about this full moon. It does, I know moon in Scorpio is not the happiest moon, but the fact that they have this loose reception here, not by degree or applying or anything, but the ruler can see them and help them out. So it's not the worst situation for the moon. Okay, so this kind of 10th, 11th, 12th chunk of weather, this gets done. I think I'm going to call it when the moon gets into Sagittarius. And that's going to be, let's see, by about 3 a.m. on the 13th Central Time. So that'll be what, 8 a.m. Universal Standard Time. So in the morning on the 13th, things will start to feel a bit lighter, less heavy, less difficult. And then that's about 6 p.m. Eastern Australian time, Japan time, about dinner time on the 13th or your last meal of the day, usually. Then things should start to feel better on the 13th for those globally east time zones. So hang in there around on the 13th still with some of this. But yeah, Sag moon. Then we're getting a trine from Mars. That's much easier to deal with. So yeah. All right. Then I mean, at this point, like the next few days, some astrology is just queuing up. We're getting Mercury and Mars square is starting to come into an adherence around like 15th of May. We're getting Mars now, having Mercury approach them. We're also getting this Sun-Uranus conjunction. This is another one that's really gearing up around May 15th, but is going to perfect the 17th? The 17th. We have a lot of things that are perfecting or completing on the 17th of May. So then our next patch of weather that's really interesting, I think, is leading up to that. It's like the 15th, 16th, 17th. This is spicy. This is really spicy. This is boldly, I mean, as boldly as Taurus is going to be, because usually Taurus will be a bit more careful. Taurus likes to kind of keep the peace, or if we're going to do conflict, let's have a stable situation to do some healthy conflict in. That being said, Sun Uranus, they're like, I'm me. That's all I can be is me. I'm gonna come in here. Maybe not like the Kool-Aid guy, but like, I'm gonna be me and not very compromising. Uranus is not a compromising energy, and the sun itself, not always very compromising. Very like a time mid-May, find ways and people to express yourselves to in a way that is safe for everyone. We've got Mercury square Mars, so then the words with this a lot of energy. And so it's like, are the plans and the ideas really being channeled into our motivations and then channeled into, materializing things in the world, manifesting, if you will. And maybe you got to make some adjustments or some changes in order to do that and put the ideas with the actions, but it's possible here. So this could just be like, again, like a very bold time of just like, yep, this is me. I'm doing this. We're getting it done. Cool. Great. At the same time, when Mercury and Mars are in a square like this, This is where you go to lunch with your mother-in-law and you say the curtains are blue and she's like, "What did you call me?" And you're like, "I didn't say anything." So it could be like you're trying to do your best and still the words are landing in this like sharp way. So and with this big streak of individuality and authenticity that kind of can come with like raw expression. Again, if you've got the right outlets, the right audiences, like what a potent recipe for action and expression. If you do not have good outlets, this can be rough and hurtful sometimes. So, all to say, everyone be on your best behavior on the 16th and the 17th. If you're not being on your best behavior, do so safely. Mercury's going to disappear from the morning sky around this time too. So now, earlier in the talk today, I was talking about how Mercury, planning, travel, purchasing, buying, selling, communications, Mercury, that stuff, better shape the first part of the month, really good shape after the 25th of May. By the 16th of May, things are starting to get worse for Mercury. And so we get into this slump now in the middle of May for Mercury where they are getting too close to the sun. It's getting a little too hot too hot, too uncomfortable there. They're also hidden. So this idea of Mercury being communication, and when they're this close to the sun, we cannot see them in the morning or the evening sky. So literally our words are harder to be heard. Our messages are harder to be delivered to your average person. Now, at the same time, maybe you're next to a source of power or a powerful person and having conversations with them. But all in all, it's not the best time to like send a letter and have it be received swiftly and the way that you want. So Mercury's under the beams starting on the 16th. Oh, and also the 15th, 16th, 17th, great time for problem solving. This is like a STEM slam dunk. You know, if you are looking for an engineering solution, this is like mad scientist kind of weather. We've got Mercury and Mars and Mars and Mercury together. You can get people who are just incredible technicians, uh, trades people, crafts people who are just like precise and just tight, have it together. So smarty pants energy in a lot of ways. And so, you know, all of the stuff about expression aside, great for problem solving and practically just getting stuff done and finding solutions when you don't usually have them. On the 16th, Mercury getting under the beams. Venus is out of her post-retrograde time. So Venus stationed at around 10 degrees of Aries, and they stationed, now these dates have fallen out of my head. Venus stationed retrograde. Let me find it. It's going to bother me now. March 1st, they stationed retrograde at 10 degrees. On April 12th, they stationed direct, and they've been going through all of those same degrees that they had been traveling all of May up until the 16th. Then they get done retracing all those steps and they return to that 10-degree mark where they originally started this whole trip. So any Venus retrograde stories that you've had in February, March, April, May of 2025, by May 16th, now that should be in the past, in the rear view, or wrapping up, or understood. So that's great. The 17th is the day. There's all that activity. So again, it could just be a really busy Saturday. A little soft, mind your own business. Again, it really depends on the context and what you're doing under the sky. Especially if you are born by day. I want those people on like maybe the 18th, 19th. If you're born by day, we're going to get this last pass of the moon with Pluto Mars. So there's so much space between them. So it's like very like low threat level. I'm not that worried about it. But if you're born by day, Mars is a bit more of a problem. So maybe mind your own business on the 17th and 18th. At the same time, the 18th, yeah, there's a lot of constructive things. It's like when the moon is connecting with so many planets, they're going to be connecting with Venus. I don't know if I'm allowed to use horary in this, but it's like the carrying of the light, the transfer of light. It's more of an advanced kind of technical jargon thing for when two planets normally wouldn't interact, but then a third one helps them. It's like a little matchmaker, and they help them. All to say, the 18th, the moon is just connecting with so many planets that it might just be a really constructive couple of days on the 17th or 18th. So it's again, it's like, is that busyness and action and, some of it kind of not the most like easeful looking or comfortable looking, is that a day to mind your own business, or is it a day when you're getting a lot of stuff done, talking to a lot of people, running into a lot of people? And that stuff is great. So I don't know. Not the same level of alarm or anything that I have at like end of April into May. But again, if you're waiting for things to happen, if you're waiting to hear back on something, if you're waiting for anything, the 17th, 18th might be more when those things happen or shake out. And then we get the sun into Gemini. So what I thought was very interesting about mid-month here was that the sun is going to be interacting with these outer planets and really locking into this outer planet configuration of Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and trines and sextiles with each other. Uh, the sun's going to be locking into that around May 19th, May 20th, as it enters into Gemini. So if you're trying to get a finger on the pulse of what is this in your chart, what is this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto business going to be for you? One time this month to try to peek at that or sense that would be May 19th and 20th. The sun is going to move through. I mean, that whole Sun Uranus conjunction, really. So yeah, pretty much all mid-May. Let's just say that whole middle week of May, we're really going to be feeling into these outer planet configurations, and I think the leaps forward in change that can happen. I keep saying leap forward with this, but it's not always forward, is it? I'm in the United States. I think we're leaping back, unfortunately, but there's a leap happening. Uh, each of us in our personal lives, not collectively, but personally, we're also going to be experiencing these outer planets. Even though they're outer planets, I definitely still believe I see them. I see them working in individual lives. It's not just the collective. Uh, but yeah, be watching those days for that if you would like. Um, the benefics can see Gemini right now. I'm excited for Sun in Gemini. Uh, Sun is going to get in there. Venus can see the sun. Jupiter's in there with the sun. So I think Sun in Gemini is just going to be just fine. Uh, and getting that trine from Pluto. So very powerful time in the middle of May. That injection of Pluto, injection of power, that can come out in so many ways. Maybe you just feel more vital. Maybe feel more able to tackle projects that require energy, whether it's mental energy, physical energy, emotional energy. Pluto is potentially power differentials, power dynamics. the sun here in a trine is much more able to deal with that, to leverage it, yeah, best to leverage it, navigate it without being harmed by Pluto. Less likely if the sun is going to be harmed by Pluto when they're in a trine like this. Uh, and then, transformation, changing of especially deeply ingrained patterns, especially deeply ingrained thought patterns in Aquarius, patterns of thinking, patterns of view, really stuck views, getting really attached to views. Like I believe the world, like as when I, when I used to be like a very, oh God, there was like a whole decade where I was one of those Reddit atheists. Oh my God. Don't tell on me. Don't tell on me. Uh, I was so intellectually stubborn, and I'm an Aquarius rising, so I'm talking shit about myself. But it's like I was so intellectually stubborn about my worldviews and about how I thought the world operated. And I thought the only lens I needed was the scientific one. And I was like, so insufferable. Long story short, if you have anything like that, we all have got that. It's not a who, it's a which one is it for you personally. We've all got things that we are like, that is how the world works. My brother, he's a farmer. His is red barns. He believes barns should be red. If you got a barn and it is white, that isn't going to work. Now, under this weather, with Sun in Gemini, getting a trine from Pluto, what great weather under which, what great skies under which to change our minds, to take on new, differing ideas. Gemini can hold space for the both, and Gemini holds space for like, yeah, it can be like this and that. And I don't know how at the same time, but they are both that and this. So I think mid-May, there's just so many Pluto contacts. The squares, not as easy to change those habit patterns, but the trines, as much we can get leverage and get in there and tinker. So good luck with that. But I just want to point that out. Those first few degrees when Sun is in Gemini, they're just going to be feeling all of these outer planets very strongly. And then Neptune, of course, is involved in their kind of shooting their love beams of acceptance, forgiveness, which can be great, but also confusion. I'm gonna pretend like that doesn't exist for a minute. Imagining and dreaming and visioning of what could be better. Neptune is injecting that too, that the sun is getting as it enters into Gemini mid-May. So very potent time for dreaming, imagining, changing. And I guess at this point, around the 22nd, little temporary Mercury protocols. Mercury is applying to Uranus. They are completing that configuration on the 25th, right? It's kind of like Mercury retrograde protocols for a few days. Like double check your timing of your things, double check the fine print on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th into the 25th. So pretty much till I would say, I'll just call it at the 25th because by then Mercury is going to get on the other side of Neptune. But May 22nd through the 25th, more interruptions with our communication, interruptions with the internet, interruptions with travel, commute, purchasing, buying, selling, all of that. Mercury is running into some interference, running into some static, some detours, interruptions. So do your best to navigate them. Just be flexible. That's always helpful when Uranus is around, is to just be flexible as much as possible. May 22nd through the 25th. And then on the 25th, hallelujah, Mercury is entering Gemini for a short time only. They're there for a good time, but not a long time. And that's when you want to get all your Mercury stuff done. So they're going to be in there until June 8th. So it's so short every year. I'm just like, why aren't they in there longer? I know why, but I don't need to get into it. May 25th to June 8th. That's your nice Mercury weather. Do all your Mercury things. What else about the 22nd? There's a benefic enclosure on the 23rd into the 24th, depending on your time zone. So let's see. Yeah, the 23rd. Venus is going to be betwixt the rays of Venus and Jupiter. It's like getting a hug from aunties. It's very nice and supportive. It's when things will go more easefully or just feel more easeful, or people are in better moods. And the specific timing of that, so lunar benefic enclosure, May 23rd from 9:12 p.m. Universal Time on Friday. So Friday evening through to 11:43 in the morning on Saturday, the 24th Universal Time. So 9:12 p.m. till 11:43 a.m. Central Time on the 23rd. So that's going to be Friday afternoon from 4:12 p.m. until the next morning at 6:43 a.m. Nice weather. And sorry, global Eastern time zones for you, that's going to be more like on the 24th. So morning of the 24th into the afternoon of the 24th. So that's going to be a Saturday. Looks pretty nice if you're more in the global Eastern time zones. Then we're going to get to the 24th and talk about Saturn. Oh yeah. So before Mercury gets into Gemini, this is kind of interesting. Little Mercury, Uranus. I mean, Saturn and Uranus have been in this sextile, which is good for like slow, methodical change over time, like slowly transforming a thing. Mercury's really touching into that May 22nd, 23rd, 24th. So it's really good practical problem solving energy again. There's just so much of it this month. I usually don't say problem solve this much in a forecast. I usually say it like 0 to 1 times. I've said it like 5 times today. Because we keep having Mercury, Mars, Uranus, Saturn. When I put those together, they can do some things that are helpful. Now, last thing. So, okay, Saturn is experiencing that. Cool. Then they're going to go into Aries on the 24th. And we're going to get that 3-month preview, effectively June, July, August of 2025. We're going to have our Saturn solstice season. Usually I call it like, I'm in the northern hemisphere, so Saturn girl summer. But if I want to do like a non-hemispheric, non-gendered version, it would be Saturn solstice season. We're having a Saturn solstice, my friends. So now this is where people who have early cardinal stuff, early planets, points in Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you might be noticing this. Saturn is slow, old, experienced, mature, wise. They are also delays, secrets, obstructions, no, rejection. They can be healthy boundaries, but they can also be rejection. Depends on, what direction the rejection is going. But Saturn is definitely all of that. So if you're just noticing those Saturn themes, if you got early Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, Aries stuff, yeah, that might be worth noticing. Let me see exactly what time it is. 10:35 p.m. Central Time, so effectively on the 25th for most of the world. I'm gonna make a movie, or I'm gonna make a movie. I'm gonna make a film. I'm gonna make a video about Saturn and Aries eventually. So stay tuned for that. I want to do like a proper rising sign video, like how I did the Saturn and Pisces, which PS, like definitely reflect. Go watch the Saturn and Pisces video I made 3 years ago. see how it's landing, do a postmortem on what Saturn has been doing in Pisces since March of 2023. But yeah, Saturn is now going to be affecting Aries and Aries ruled or Mars ruled, these Mars ruled house topics of Aries. That was a weird way of saying that. Apologies. So for this theoretical Capricorn rising, now Saturn is going to be affecting their fourth house of home, parents, land, ancestors, the past, their private life. Saturn is responsibility and commitment. So responsibility and commitment around home, parents, past, ancestry, hard work around those topics, secrets around those topics. Anything like that. Now with Saturn going to be affecting a new set of life topics for each of us. So if you are a whole sign Scorpio rising, Saturn's moving into your sixth whole sign house. So this is a place of labor, the office space you go into regularly, whether that's in your own home or at an external office or space. We got labor. We also have within that labor in the sixth house, it's usually not like well paid. It can be at worst exploitative labor or slavery. At best, if we have more agency in not being paid, it's called service work and volunteering. For most of us, I think the sixth comes out as our daily grind, the daily chores we have to do, the punching in and punching out at work, and all of the hierarchy that is in that place. So like bosses, or if you're the boss, if you've got people who report to you, that's also sixth house. Saturn comes in, maybe you got more responsibility, or maybe something around labor gets more difficult. This is also pets, animals. So more responsibility or challenges around pets or animals. Sixth houses are health. It is disease and recovery from disease. Hard work around those things, difficulties around those things, responsibilities around those things. So all of that. So you can play that game, put Saturn in Aries, depending on your rising sign, and those house topics. You can Google, search engine, sixth house, house topics, sixth house symbolism. If you're nasty, do it Hellenistic. Hellenistic significations of the sixth house. And that'll tell you. And then you can do significations for the ninth house. Say if you are like a Leo rising and you got Saturn going into your ninth house. So all to say, these significations of Saturn are going to be in a different set of life topics for about 2.5 years, 3 years. We're going to get a taste of it between June, July, August, and then September 1st, Saturn's going to come back into Pisces. And then we won't see them back in Aries until 2026. So that's them. I guess one last thing to leave you with, there's so many ways to squish together the topics of Saturn with the topics of Aries, with the flavor of Aries. How I like to think about it as a planet in a place, or planet in a sign is like a planet, is like a person in an environment. It's like dropping someone into an environment. Are we dropping them into a desert? Your grandma's living room? Are we dropping them into a lake? Like where are we dropping this planet? And how are they going to respond to being in that environment? That is our question with Saturn or any planet being in a sign. So Saturn being, say, rejection in Aries, fast. Aries is fast rejection. Sometimes it's good to get rejected quick so that you don't waste time. Other times, being too quick to reject something is very problematic. Can lead to a lot of challenges. The ways that our brains create bias and the false stories that underlie so many biases are neurobiologically wired in us to be this quick acting rejection, this quick acting judgment. Saturn is judgment and critiquing something and being quick to do that. When our brains do that too quick, and when our brains have all these preconditioned biases, this gets to be bad news, my friends. So we need to remember our Saturn and Pisces lessons, hold each other and ourselves. Corey, this is my favorite Corey Muscar quote for Saturn and Pisces. Hold yourself with the most, or wait, hold yourself with the highest standards, but also hold yourself with the greatest compassion. Yeah, we have high standards and we understand where we are and how we got here and what would actually help to get us out. And we do that softly and with love. And I don't want all of that to go flying out the window when Saturn gets into Aries. So that is, I'm just going to frankly say one of my biggest concerns is just that too fast to Saturn, too fast in doing Saturn. And we can do that to ourselves. You know, even quick rejection of ourselves. Oh, what a dumb idea, we think to ourselves. No, just sleep on it a few nights. Maybe it's a good idea. Saturn in Aries. It's also really good for a lot of things. I mean, God, one of the most organized people I've worked with. It's a loving thing. I'm sure they wouldn't mind me calling them out about this, about being amazing. Tristan Sky, they're a channeler. He's a channeler. And uh, Saturn and Aries person, and they're so like, they got good standards. And it's like very Saturn, like frankly, like, yeah, here's the structure, here's the expectations, let's do it. Very quick to like get the structure and do the real world work that needs to be done to do a thing. I mean, so, and plus, like, Tristan is just magical and mystical. And they're not any of those difficult things that I just mentioned about Saturn and Aries. So it's like when I think about Saturn and Aries and I start to worry about that, I think about people, I've got actually several examples in mind of people I know in my life who have Saturn and Aries, who are just like not too quick to judge, not too quick to say no. And on the contrary, I think that Saturn is just quick to have its stuff together, and get something done. So I think that's another way that Saturn and Aries can come out. So that's just a little bit. I'm going to, of course, over the next several years in upcoming content, I'm going to riff on Saturn and Aries quite a bit more. Um, but yeah, we'll see it very soon in about 4 weeks. Last thing about that though. So Saturn, when they enter Aries, is going to really that Saturn-Neptune conjunction is going to intensify. Go check out that video because I really get into what those planets are together. So that is what we are probably going to also notice on the 24th, or sorry, yeah, the 24th when this happens, is that intensification of Saturn's experience of Neptune. Okay. So then on the 25th, we've got Mercury going into Gemini. Like I mentioned, that stuff, their significations are going to start to move along much better. Let me check on the chat though. Jendi says, I'm guessing it's when we were talking about the Mercury, Pluto, Moon stuff, and the square between Mercury, Pluto. I mean, any kind of configuration with Pluto. They mention ego death, and I mean, there's many moments. There's many moments of ego death, hopefully for us every day. But boy, if you want a nice, potent ego death, if you're into those trips, or, there's a lot of ways it can happen. Um, those Pluto times, I agree. Like I totally agree with you. Like those Pluto pieces of time, they they very much support those types of deaths. And it can be those great letting go. It's that, so what, like in this word ego death, that's, I think it's gotten kind of a lot of different meanings depending on who you ask. I guess when I think of an ego death, I think about any time when you are taking that big concept of self. Like for me, it's like, ooh, I'm Dr. Claire Moon, blah, blah, blah. Uh, and and putting that down and sometimes being forced to. So, like or like being in an argument and not like the correct thing to do in that argument is to not fight but to apologize. That is a big ego death moment that I think a lot of us can run into a little bit more commonly. That isn't like so out there. It's not like going and taking a big mushroom trip or something, which is another potent way to get an ego death. But I mean, I literally just had one of these. I just apologized to my mom for something that I didn't want to apologize for at all, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Uh, and I knew that in that situation, it was going to make the situation better. And so I did it. But I had to like, mm, it really feels like I had like a whiny toddler inside of me that I was like, no, we can't. We must apologize to our mother. That's an ego death, a little one. Yeah, Pluto stuff. Definitely a good time for those. Oh yeah, the tower. Yeah, good one, Michael. So these Uranus moments, I feel like, yeah, Uranus, Pluto, both of them feel like the tower to me, depending, but Uranus totally, because it's like, yeah, it's like a crack of lightning. It's, something is suddenly on fire. And like the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it shows like a tower literally falling over and there's like fire and lightning and it's very ominous. And sometimes like the descriptions that I've read of the tower card talk about how sometimes the things that crumble are things that we're really holding on to, but that need to crumble. Yeah. So it can be not fun, but yeah, necessary sometimes. Uh, Thanks for your comments, everyone. It was good. Thanks for all your additions. So we're rounding out the end of the month. Uh, Mercury's in good shape finally, after a bit of some interesting conversations. They're going to help out, Mercury is going to help out Jupiter. Mercury is going to help the sun. They are both in Gemini. And when Mercury gets in, it's like the person who is in charge of that place gets home and it's like, I brought snacks and I know where everything is, including this light switch you guys didn't know about. So that's going to be nice for all of the planets in Gemini starting on May 25th. Uh, the sun is close to Mercury. Mercury and sun are close. That's not a problem for Mercury and Gemini. They've got a secret loophole. They got their chariot. They got their sunbrella because they're in their own home and they're like, the sun doesn't bother me. I'm just fine. So again, they're just all to say writing, communicating, traveling, planning, using your brain, all of that should go better. God, dare I hope for more executive functioning for myself. That'll all go better May 25th through the end of the month into June to June 8th. Then we got a lunar malefic enclosure. It's kind of interesting. We didn't have the moon hugged between rays of benefics or malefics pretty much at all the first 3 weeks of the month. There were none, which is kind of rare. Usually there's more than that, but a few at the end of the month here. And this last one, this is now a time on the 25th into the 26th that could feel a little less easeful, a bit more strained or difficult or uncomfortable. Sometimes because we're choosing to do things like that are uncomfortable that we want to do, that we need to do. And other times it's just other random things happening that aren't great. So lunar malefic enclosure, kind of, take care of yourself extra take care of other people on the 25th. Universal time from 10:05 p.m. until the next day at 5:32 p.m. So really late in the day on the 25th and most of the day on the 26th for universal time zones and nearby. Central time, this is actually going to kick off earlier in the evening on the 25th at 5:05 p.m. Central until the next day around noon at 12:32 p.m. on the 26th Central time. So take extra care of yourself there. Don't overschedule yourself during these times, ideally. Or it is a good time to choose to just like do the hard things. Um, and then global Eastern time zones. This is going the difficult little patch here. That's going to be pretty much all on the 26th. So that's going to be, gosh, the after, no, late morning on the 26th into the evening, into the late evening. So into the wee hours. So on the 26th into the 27th, we're going to get the moon applying to Saturn for the first time since Saturn got into Aries, because while Saturn got in there, the moon was in aversion, couldn't see. So then the moon enters Gemini on the 26th. We're going to get our sights on Saturn, see what they're doing, how that feels a little bit more. On the 26th, we had Gemini New Moon. So it looks like it is at 10:02 p.m. Central Time. So this Gemini New Moon is effectively for most of the world on May 27th, on Tuesday. And it's going to be witnessed by the benefics. It is not being bothered by the malefics. Like this looks like a much more like cool, chill, fun new moon than the last full moon that was in Scorpio. That looked not very fun that we talked about mid-month. Uh, the Taurus new moon we just had was just okay. It was fine, but it wasn't like amazing. Not too bad though. But this new moon, yeah, not as heavily just like put on by the more extreme intense planets, much more influenced by the more temperate, calm, tranquil planets. So Gemini is kind of a fun, busy sign, but it looks like not a drag, not a heavy day. The last aspect the moon has before this is a conjunction with Mercury. And right after, they're going to meet Mars by a sextile. So the moon is going to be really talking to Mercury strongly and Mars here. So whatever is new, whatever's opening up end of May, it is very like passionate, excited. It looks fun. It looks just like the motivation is really being put where the plans in the mind are. So here are these things I want to do. I'm thinking about them. I'm planning them. I'm analyzing them and able to send that information down to Mars, who can act and do. And so that's really working nicely together, the ability to put together the plans, the thoughts, the actions, the words to the actions. Very, very hooked up to do that. May 26th. Especially if it's something that is more intellectual, based around communication or thought. This could be very subtly like a new beginning just in how you think about something. So it is an air sign in Gemini. So it can be those internal examples of new beginnings and external examples of new beginnings. But it looks pretty rad. I have not too many negative notes about this one. But looks like a kind of constructive, transformative potential with this new moon. It is pretty closely plugged in with Pluto as well. So just adding to that note of transformative potential and in a favorable way. So that is one way to look at the end of the month. There's not too much else to discuss. We're going to get the moon applying to benefics the following day, and we're going to get a lunar benefic enclosure. So really like the 26th, 27th, 28th look pretty sweet. Lunar benefic enclosure on the 28th at 3:21 in the morning universal time until 1 p.m. So what is that? That's like a good chunk of time. So all morning into the afternoon. That's going to be for Central Time late on the 27th on Tuesday. So for most of the world, this lunar benefic enclosure is on Wednesday on the 28th. If you're in the more globally Western time zones, this is starting for us the night of the 27th and into the wee hours. So yeah, 28th, 29th looking a little better. The 30th, 31st, the moon is plugging in with Pluto. But at this point, so many of the other things in the fixed signs, like we don't have those Taurus planets that are adding like that T-square tension. We don't have that as much at the end of the month. Even like Pluto and Uranus, they're in a degree-based trine at this point, so that's not as crunchy and intense. So only like small bit of tension here, maybe on the 30th and the 31st, but could just be more invigorating, enlivening type of healthy tension. And I think that's it. I think those were my big things for the month. So let's see what questions there are, if there are any. Anything I didn't go over that you wanted me to look at? Ooh, another good question. What do we think about the third Jupiter Saturn square in different signs? Yeah, so great question, because the first of these two, which happened, it was August of 2024. It was like mid-August of 2024, uh, around Hanukkah, Christmas time, December of 2024. And now the last of these squares is going to be in June. But by then, they're in cardinal signs. Both of these planets have moved into their next signs. So this third part of the story, usually when we get a configuration happening 3 times, it's some 3-part story, and we kind of can wait to see, well, how will this thing conclude? Here, that doesn't exactly happen. It's almost like saying, like, whatever, because I think the symbolism around this configuration too, it's like growing pains. It's like Jupiter's been trying, even in Gemini, they've been trying to expand, grow, stabilize, and Saturn has been just making it very difficult. Saturn's limiting the growth, constraining the growth, slowing it down, saying no to it. So this growing pains kind of thing, it doesn't just wrap up in the same way that it started. It's like the fact that this last part of the square happens in new terrain. It's like new territory, new environments that the story is completing. So it's almost like imagine starting a fight inside of a building. Like imagine starting a fight in a bar. And then they say, take it outside. So you do. And then you're having your fight out on the lawn outside. Whole different ballgame. So similarly, it's like these growing pains are no longer happening in mutable signs that are having all of this trouble, like sticking to a straight line, having stability at all. Now in cardinal signs, there's more stability than mutable ones. So I do wonder, like maybe these growing pains, the way that we address them, it changes. The way we address the growing pains changes. The way that we are growing changes. The way that we're being restricted changes. But there is still that tone of like something's trying to grow and something keeps kind of limiting it or holding it back. That is still here, but it is happening in a different way. So, and also now Jupiter is going to be a lot stronger. So like Saturn's actually getting less powerful, even though they're earlier in zodiacal order. They're in this stronger overcoming position. That's the search term. But like condition wise, dignity wise, like now Jupiter in Cancer is going to be way more powerful than they were in Gemini. And Saturn is going to be less powerful than they were. So it's almost like it's also different in the way that these planets are able to leverage their own powers. So definitely different. Great eye. Thank you for asking me. I'm very curious because I don't know how it's going to be. It's going to be different though. And then it is the last of those three. And then we're going to start to go into the trine and we'll start to see what it looks like, especially when Saturn goes back into Pisces. We're going to get some water trine action where what was being limited or constrained that's been trying to grow is no longer being restricted at all. We're going to have a little bit, it won't go back by degree exactly. We're going to get a little bit more squariness eventually. But then, like, and I know this is getting way far out, but just thinking about this Saturn-Jupiter cycle, eventually we'll get into a trine where that's the main thing. So again, like all of 2024, most of 2025 is spent in this growing pains. And then 2026, 2027, we get more into like or did I say square? Square growing pains, trine, less growing pains in the future. So if we can all kind of like hold on to our butts until then. And then the cycle shall go on. Yeah. Should probably do a video about that too, honestly. I did a workshop, which I don't have linked anywhere, I don't think anymore, because it's pretty much irrelevant. I did a workshop on the square. And I left kind of a cliffhanger that, hey, this third part of this, it's such a different animal that I didn't include it in my Gemini Pisces square workshops because it's a whole different thing. Okay, thanks everyone. I think that's it. Last call. I'm gonna do some announcements. Let me think. I have, again, a discount code. It's kind of like, okay, I have a sliding scale for my services, and then I've got my regular prices. And then I've got a secret third thing that pretty much every month I have a discount code to kind of act as like a soft sliding scale, just if anyone needs a little extra help with the cost, because I don't want that to get in the way of people getting astrology, because it is such a helpful tool. But if you would like to check that out, check out my offerings. If you enjoy how I metaphorically jabber on about these things, I can do that more personally for you at www.aligninglightastrology.com. I do all of my readings over Zoom. I do them live. If you want to report, I don't do reports, but I have been known to just do like a video recording if you don't want to like talk face to face. I know sometimes people don't want to do that. I am willing to do like a kind of one-sided video report, if you will. I also have my electional offerings, which is good for choosing the right time or the best time to do a thing. And I will also have mentoring, teaching. I am doing the last few months. We're finally wrapping up. It's been about a year and a half of running the reading group with Chris Brennan's book, Hellenistic Astrology, The Study of Fate and Fortune. Melissa and I have been doing a reading group for that book for the last year and a half. It's not too late to jump in. We're still going to talk about bonification and maltreatment, and that is going to be, it's the second Saturday of the month at 1:30 p.m. Central Time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you are part of his course, I should have led with that. If you're part of Chris Brennan's course, we're doing that reading group. A lot of people don't know about it, which is why I'm talking about it. So get in on that. We have not talked about bonification, maltreatment, zodiacal releasing, triplicity lords. So we're getting into the meatiest technique stuff right now. So again, if you're part of his course and you haven't gotten in on the reading group, it's kind of like the last chance and best chance to get the most out of it right now. So email me if you have any questions. aligninglightastrology@gmail.com if you want in on that. And I have a CAELi review article linked below. I wrote a piece on how to analyze empty houses. Empty houses. We all got them. I think it's a point of concern for many of us. So I talk all about how to analyze that. You can check out that publication somewhere linked below. Otherwise, hit like, hit subscribe. Thanks for being here. Thank you for your time, your energy, your attention, all of it. If you have any questions after the fact, if you have anecdotes that you want to share from your life, like, hey, this is what's up, please comment below. I like to keep up with those. And yeah, I just hope everyone has a great May. We've gotten through like so much of the most difficult stuff of the year. We have gotten through March and May, or sorry, March and April, which were wild. We got through all those void of course moons of March. We got through the retrogrades. We got through a lot. We got through the T-square and this last Mars and Pluto opposition. We got through a lot. So I'm looking forward in May to seeing the dust settle a bit. And then I'm looking even more forward into June, how the second half of the year is going to look, because Jupiter is going to switch signs, which is going to change a lot of things for a lot of us. So stay tuned in. Last thing, I do have a newsletter you can sign up for. I send one out. That's on my website. And I do a Q&A every second Tuesday of the month at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 Eastern Time. I do my once monthly astrology question and response time where people give me their astrology questions and I do my best to respond. Or if I don't know about it, most of the time I know different astrologers who would be better that I can give you that little breadcrumb and you can go find them and learn what you need to learn. So yeah, I like that. I do it live on YouTube. Same model as this. So if I don't see you at the newsletter, I don't see you in my inbox. Hopefully I'll see you at the question and response time. Thank you, everyone. Have a good month. I don't think, was there any more questions? No. Nope. Hello, Astrolofax. I see you on the internet. I think you're on Threads, right? Is everyone on Blue Sky? Now I'm just rambling, but if there's anyone still here, or comment below. I guess if you're listening to this later, for the diehards that are still listening to me right now, I appreciate you. Is everyone on Blue Sky? Because like I've been thinking about going there. I didn't want to start another social media account under the listen, as like an electional astrologer, I cannot in good conscience seed a whole social media account under the BS weather that we have had the last several months. You can't make me do it. My Twitter account back in the day, I didn't know about electional astrology at that time, and it was a dumpster fire and it showed. And I'm never doing that again. I got some good weather coming up. I could start another social media account and I could say goodbye to Meta forever. Threads, they're all in that soup. And I don't love that soup. I want to stay connected with the community, obviously. But if you're on Blue Sky, if you would like to see me there, let me know. It'd be nice to know. I know astrologers are over there, but I haven't heard a lot of feedback as to what the vibe is. So help me out. Let me know what the vibe is over there. Um, I think that's it. Thanks, everyone. Have a good May. If you have any questions, email me.